Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, I should say. Welcome back to AIEC's Webinar Weeks. This is the third webinar in this year's series. It's a new year, new president, same old coronavirus pandemic going on. So joining us today is Fletcher Reinhardt. But before we get started, a couple housekeeping items. Please keep yourselves on mute. We do ask that you submit your questions through the chat function. Hit the little drop-down box, select AIEC, direct those questions to Brian and myself, and we'll moderate those questions to our presenters on your behalf. Today's webinar will last roughly 40-45 minutes. We'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A, and we'll go from there. Brian, what about PE credits?
For those on the call that are professional engineers, if you would like to get PDHs for this session, and you have not already, you didn't reach out during the first 16 webinars, shoot me an email, let me know, so I can make sure that I get you the appropriate certificate at the end of this to make sure you get your credits. I know most of you that are PEs, so there shouldn't be any problems there. And as you are looking to sign up for future webinars, be sure to look for the little emblem that says PDH is available. I know our first set of webinar weeks, we gave credits for all of them. They were all fairly technical sessions. This go around, there's more of a variety of offerings, so not all of them are going to qualify for PDHs, so make sure you look for the little orange emblem in any of my emails or on the registration pages to see which ones qualify.
And also, Brian, for those of you that maybe weren't able to attend in our past webinars, those webinars are available on our website, aiec.coop/webinar weeks. We are posting those as we get through them. We are recording them, so feel free to go back, check those out if you missed one.
All right, so with that, we have three presenters today. The first one is Jared Kampfworth. He is an engineer at Clinton County Electric Cooperative. He has been with Clinton County for 4 years. The last 3 years, Jared has been heavily involved in the advanced metering infrastructure deployment as a project manager and also in day-to-day operations of their AMI system. Another of our presenters is Brad Austin. He is the engineering and operations manager at Egyptian Electric Cooperative Association. Brad has 13.5 years experience working with electric cooperative system. He first joined Tri-County Electric Co-op as the project engineer in 2007. While at Tri-County, Brad held the positions of project engineer, purchasing manager, and member services manager. In 2018, he left Tri-County and joined Egyptian Electric as their engineering and operations manager. And our third speaker today is Bill Weber. He is a smart grid solution specialist for Fletcher Reinhardt Company. He started his career out at Emerson Electric in what was to become the TWAX system. Bill's first assignment was to support 16 or so TWAX pilot systems across the country and to help understand communication issues. Bill now has been working with utilities on demand response, distribution automation, automated meter reading systems, and advanced metering infrastructures for over 35 years. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Bill, and you can start the presentation.
Cool. Dan, Brian, thanks so much for the introductions. Ashley and AIEC, thank you so much for setting this webinar up for us, and thanks to all the attendees for your time and attention. So we're going to talk about outage management today. As they mentioned, there's three presenters, and I'm going to kind of go through the history evolution of outage and just kind of set the stage of where it's been and where it's going. And then I'm going to let Brad and Jared discuss what they're doing today with the new RF AMI systems that they're one's deployed fully and the other one's being deployed. So at the very start of things, what is an outage? it's typically defined as, we can sense at 80% of the voltage level for something greater, 6 cycles or greater, that something's going on in the power line that we need to pay attention to. Typically, a momentary outage is defined if that condition persists for up to 30 seconds. That's a configurable time. And then a sustained outage, just setting the definition as anything greater than a momentary outage. So, what happens when an outage occurs? The outage is sensed by the meter. The first thing it's got to do is it's got to do all of its housekeeping, prepare itself for shutdown, save all of its data, and make sure everything's under control, just like any normal electronics would have to do. If a momentary outage occurs, then that meter records that event, but it doesn't transmit anything right away on the network. It just saves that data for later. If a sustained outage occurs, then that's when it, after it's shut down, done all of its cleanup, it says, hey, this is something that I need to get the data up through the system, through the network immediately, so that it can be used at the head end to make decisions and feed into OMS and other things. So it starts that process. And, you guys are all familiar with this. I'm not telling you anything special here. Traditionally, before even, AMR existed, you depended on phone calls and maybe IVRs to get data, some amount of data in. The power line systems, I think, made it better. But they still had to account for distribution network changes. They typically required some intervention, and they may even require your own personal knowledge of your distribution network. So for you to be able to make intelligent decisions about what's going on. But they were an improvement. Initially the radio-based systems, they would send up, several last gasp messages. They would be sent at extremely high priority, the highest priority the system had. And, they would just basically flood the system with outage messages saying that something was going on. And then, over time, individual utilities or with advancing technology, reclosers, sectionalizing, switching, SCADA, fault location isolation, strategies have all been implemented, which change the landscape related to how you sense and manage outages. So, the results traditionally, again, with an OMS system, it did a reasonable job because you guys set up the parameters based on your experience, and you developed the logic based on what you worked with and what you did. So it did a reasonable job of getting you to where you needed to be and start figuring out what was going on out there. The PLC systems, they were somewhat dependent on, if the distribution network changed, were you pinging, were you trying to communicate on the right line segment, required some manual intervention and or automation to make the things work, and pinging the meters and managing the data, and then re-pinging the meters and re-managing the data. And so it was an improvement, but again, it took some work and some effort to get in. Traditional RF systems, and I worked on some of these, they actually had a low success rate, and due to distribution network operations, they didn't break our communication path, but they caused so many power ups and power downs to happen over and over again that we needed to really do a better job of managing that. So early outage on the RF systems was contentious at best. So the message that did come in on the early systems was a one-way last gasp. We didn't acknowledge the message. They were randomized and sent at a very high priority, and we thought that would work pretty well. What did result is we had a lot of high traffic, which resulted in collisions. We sent momentary as well as sustains. We sent all the restorations, and it just really made a lot of congestion on the network. So we didn't really have any network management to manage those. So, you know, I was talking to my boss at one time in the mid 90s about, you know, our outage management system. I said, hey, you know, it takes us 4 to 6 hours in the morning to read all the meters. And when you do it, when we're trying to do outage, it's the equivalent of trying to read the meters all in about a 5-minute window. And we just know that wasn't going to work. So that was kind of the start of the evolution onto newer systems. And I actually worked in the Ameren CellNet system years ago, and you know, they expected great things, and they were kind of disappointed by the earliest RF system. So I think we've come a long way. The early RF, we made a lot of hay out of how great last gas were, and it obviously takes a lot more than just last gas to make things work. So what's different today? You know, the outage algorithm, you know, we've developed a good one for today, but it also depends on superior network, just the network that's built. We now have self-healing, self-forming mesh networks. Back in the original days when we first started doing RF, we did not have design tools like we do today. So we laid out a hexagram. We gave the hexagram a radius, and we built out a honeycomb of hexagram cells across the territory to build our network, and had no idea, you know, if we had a problem, we threw another one out there to kind of cover that problem area. So today we have very good network design tools. We use those, and it makes the system work very well. We also have developed a network management algorithm. You know, that started back in the mid 90s, like I said, and we've had years and years of experience with utilities to get to where we're at today. And so, you know, it accounts for different network, electric distribution network operations. We don't transmit momentary outages, only the sustained outages. We acknowledge messages so that once we get an acknowledgement, we stop sending, which reduces congestion. And we have a very good algorithm that consolidates and minimizes traffic. And you know, I've talked to a few of our customers today, and they're like, Bill, we're seeing almost 100% of the meters report from this, and we know exactly what's going on. So, you know, suffice to say, you know, last gas is a good buzzword, generated a lot of excitement in the early 2000s, but it just isn't enough by itself. So, and you know, kind of in summary, outage management really depends on, you know, having a well-engineered RF AMI system that can support it. So, and you know, like I said, I think you're going to see so many outages get reported with this system that, you know, your OMS logic will have to be updated. And really, if you don't have an OMS system today and you put this system in, then I would encourage you to try not having OMS initially, and just you know, seeing what you can do without the OMS and integrating it later. So, and this is a case in point. This is a utility in Colorado, Holy Cross Energy. They shared with us that they drove out here and they thought there was a fuse bad based on their OMS logic. They got to this point, the fuse was good, so they popped up the command center head-end system, and they looked into that to try to figure out what's going on. And they, you know, at that point, they could see clearly that the outage was being caused by something over here. They drove to this location, found a jumper that had burned up, and were able to fix that. So instead of driving around searching for things, they were able to drive right to the location that had the problem and get it fixed. The other thing you can notice from this map that's right in command center is that nearly 100% of the homes reported the outage. So, you know, you're going to get a high percentage of the outages to report from the system. So, shifting gears just a little bit, I do want to also let you know that every single outage is time-stamped and counters are incremented. So, you know when the meter lost power, you know when it power, and you know whether it was sustained or momentary. And, I did some analysis on one of our systems a couple years ago that, brought momentary outage data back in and took a look at it. And, you can drill into the raw data if you need to figure things out more, but you can also look at this data and go, hey, in 1.1 days, or, about 28 hours, this guy had close to 600 reported outages. So my guess would be, hey, there's something dramatic going on there. We really need to get out there and take a look at it quickly. On the other hand, this guy reported about 27 outages over what's the equivalent of a 4-minute period, and didn't have any before or after. So that might be something you want to go check out, but, is it wind related? Something happened one time out there and then never happened again. So I think this post-processing of this data is also extremely useful and able to help you guys manage your system better and prevent outages from happening. And again, another thing I ran into at Ameren when I was working there is the line crews would call in and say, hey, we restored the power outage. Well, with the RF system, we already knew that the power was on, but it took them 30 minutes to call in. But what got recorded in the official indices was, 30 minutes after they actually restored the outage, because that's when they called in. Well, they were cleaning up, putting tools away, getting their trucks, ready to go to the next place, and maybe drinking a cup of coffee and going to the bathroom. So all of that got fed into your outage time. So, with this system, you're going to know precisely when things were on, when they were off, and be able to get some real accurate data, not have to guess or estimate that, one thing or another happened. So one thing I do want to share, another utility that has the system in is Rural Electric Convenience Co-op. They export the momentary outage data out of the system, out of the command center. They feed it into their ArcMap system. They join it to other data, and then they can basically say, they can look at this and go, we know it's A phase was the only phase that had a problem. We don't see any problems over here. We know this OCR must be the one that's having a problem. So they know exactly, again, where to drive to and where to look at things. And these are momentary blink counts, so they're not outages that customers may necessarily be calling in on and blowing fuses, but it gives them an idea of where to go out and patrol the line. And when they went out and looked at this, they found a couple bad insulators and were able to resolve the problem really before they had to have an outage situation. So that's what I've got. Brad, I'll turn it over to you. Since I've got the slide, just say hit it, Bill, or something. I'll move you on to the next slide when you're ready.
All right. So just to give a little background on Egyptian Electric, we've just started in 2020 of the deployment of our Landis & Gear RF system. That deployment started with the communications equipment in May of 2020. We did our first collector commissioning in June of 2020, and we started meter deployment in September of last year. At the end of the year, we were 30% deployed, and that 30% deployment was a big number for us. We put out some goals, and we hit that goal. And we are in the process. We did have a previous AMR system, which was by Aclara. It's a power line carrier system, and it had worked well for us over the years. It's about a 15-year-old system, and it was just time to migrate to the next generation for us. We have just over 2,000 miles of energized line. We serve approximately 15,000 meters, 23 substations, and our communication system looks like we have 455 routers installed and 12 collectors. And that's important in the fact that, you do not need a collector at each substation. In our case, we're about half the number of collectors we have subs. We do all of our data backhaul using Verizon cell modems, and we are an NISC co-op. I know there's a few on here that are SEDC co-ops that I see, and I am sure their integration is very similar when it comes to the applications. Next slide. So just giving you a little snapshot of our command center dashboard. This was actually an outage I captured back in October. At this time, we had around 2,000 meters, a little over 2,000 meters installed. And we had a big number jump up there of 266 meters failed all at once. And with that, at this time frame, we'd had 0 of our substations completely deployed. We had meters deployed on probably 4 different substations, but none of them were complete. All right, next slide. So the meters that we had deployed that are calling into outages, we're calling into the collectors at Carterville, at Finney, and at Murfreesboro. And again, you can see by the count there, we showed 21 calling in on the Carterville collector, 61 on the Finney collector, and 184 on the Murfreesboro collector. So if you flip to the next slide, that is the clusters of meters, the little red dots. So the actual outage was occurring northwest of Carbondale. And those collectors, one of them would be straight east of there, over around where it says Reed Station on the map. One of them was to the south and west of Carbondale, and one is actually straight north of Murfreesboro. So those meters were calling in right in the middle of 3 different collectors. All right, go ahead and go to the next slide. And like Bill was talking about, once that outage occurred, it immediately gave a time off of 7:37. In our case, this one was dispatched to a lineman, and we've got our dispatch lineman is Aaron Richards. This was done from CRC. So if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. So on this one, this is our NISC OMS page, and you can see that the actual outage under the connectivity there was SI Airport substation. SI Airport does not have a collector, and in all reality, we actually had more out than what came across on command center, because at that time we were not 100% deployed on SI Airport. I do believe that if we had been 100% deployed, we would have had 100% of the meters call in and say that they were out. So basically, just as a general screen there, I'm sure a lot of you have something similar. Whether it's SEDC or NISC would look exactly the same. So you go ahead and go to the next one. This is the graphics in OMS for NISC, and you can see the SI Airport, the little dot there, it was actually the west feeder, and this is what the OMS predicted was out, which was actually true. The whole feeder was out. Again, you can see the little red dots on this one would match up fairly closely with the little red dots from command center. You want to go ahead and go to the next one, Bill? All right, so this screen is where we do all of our prediction at. Because we are 30%, well, actually probably closer to a third now, deployed on our meters, for Landis and Gear, and then we have our Aclara system still in play, we will have to tweak these numbers drastically once we get full deployment on Landis and Gear. And this is all going to be slightly different co-op to co-op. Everybody's going to have their own numbers in here, what works for them. We played with these pretty hard about 3 years ago. And because we have a portion of our co-op that is extremely populated, and we have a portion that is very rural, we have a little squirrely numbers compared to some co-ops that are all rural or more heavily populated. So this is an area, once you start deploying, you're definitely going to want to look at. And I'm going to stop there because if I go any further, I'm going to be in Jared's. So I think the next slide is Jared's slide.
Thanks, Brad. So I'm going to kind of do the same thing of how Brad started his section of the presentation and just kind of go over how our system here at Clinton County Electric is set up. We have been fully deployed since early 2019. We began deployment in the summer of 2018. And just as Brad was saying, you know, we started with our communications equipment and then ended with our meters. So unlike Brad's system, we did not have a previous AMI or AMR system. So, you know, as far as speaking to how we went from, you know, what we had previously to what we have now, we didn't really have anything before that. We have just over 1,000 miles of energized line with approximately 6,000 meters. We have 12 substations, 166 routers, and 6 collectors. And those 6 collectors are mounted in 6 of those 12 substations. So very similar to what you just heard. It's you know, roughly half, or exactly half in our case. We use Verizon cell modems for our data backhaul, and we also use all of NISC's iView applications. You can go ahead, Bill. This is just a screenshot of our dashboard. Basically, I just wanted to kind of show you, I try to keep this dashboard as clean as I possibly can. And by that, I'm referring to, like, as you see there, the endpoint status summary at the bottom of that pie chart. Ideally, I want meters in normal and in inventory, which means we have meters out there in the field sending in reads, and we have meters in inventory sitting on the shelf ready to be put out whenever they need to be put in the field. In this scenario, during this screenshot, we had one in discovered is because one of the crews was putting in a service that day. So I know exactly what that meter is. And we have one in other, and that was due to a contractor wanting to do some work on one of our member systems. So we actually disconnected that intentionally, and we knew it was an outage. So I hid it under the other column just so it wasn't creating a outage on our dashboard screen. Go ahead, Bill. So here, I'm gonna talk a little bit about AMI being integrated with our OMS system. So Command Center is tied directly to the OMS system. So when Command Center senses an outage, it automatically creates an outage ticket in OMS when Command Center senses that outage. Then on the flip side, when Command Center senses a restoral, it is automatically restored in our OMS system. And this is just done through the multi-speak functionality with NISC. We use CRC as our after-hours answering service, and we determined that we are not going to dispatch after hours unless a member physically reports the outage. So what happens is if we have an outage at midnight, we will not dispatch, or we will not have CRC dispatch on that outage until that member physically calls in and tells CRC they are without power. And the main reason for that is just so we're not sending crews to go, you know, in the middle of the night to hook up an oil well if it can wait till the next business day. We also have outage codes set up in our OMS to distinguish outages that a member called in versus an outage that was restored prior to the member calling in. So Bill, if you go to the next slide here, it'll make a little bit more sense. I think I have a screenshot of it. Yeah, so like right here, in the top red box, you can see time off is 12:21 a.m. And we actually did not get this one restored until 10:30 a.m. that same day. However, if this was an actual residence that called in and told us they were without power, obviously we would dispatch on it right away. But this example was an oil well. So in the cause code, we have set up as AMI found, no member called. And that's just how we, separate different outages in our system. And then down there at the bottom, you can see whenever the outage was restored, it puts a date and timestamp on it and also the user. So like that, the bottom register there, this was all done through the AMI system. And then whenever we had our lineman out there and he got it turned back on, I put a comment in there on what he found. So instead of putting that in the cause code or equipment code, we just put that in the dispatch comments. You can go to the next one, Bill. So here's outage reporting via the AMI system. So there's an immediate response from command center. There's already an outage ticket in OMS before the member calls in to report the outage. So before anybody makes a phone call, there's a ticket already in our OMS system. Individual and line outages report almost perfectly. And then this bottom bullet here is just something on our system in particular. So we've experienced some minor issues with substation outages due to the way we have our system set up. So as I said earlier, we have our collectors mounted in the substations. So the collectors themselves have battery backup in the collector. However, our data backhaul, which is done through cell modems, we do not have battery backup on those. So if we lose a substation, the collector will continue to be powered up because of the battery backup in the collector. But when we lose a sub, our cell modem goes down. So there is no way for the information that the collector is basically collecting from all of the meters and routers to get to the cell modem back to command center, because our cell modem is off because it doesn't have power. The way we're going to try to alleviate that is try to bring in power from outside of the sub, so that whenever we have a substation down and we are backfeeding, that the particular cabinet that our collector and cell modem is in still has power whenever we're being backfed, because it's from outside of the sub. So if you go to the next screen, Bill, I'll kind of show you how we have it set up here. So this picture on the left is the box. It's mounted about 3 feet off the ground inside the substation. So when we lose the substation, this box here is without power. So our plan is to feed this box from outside of the sub with an underground wire. That way, when we are backfeeding, this cabinet still has power, which in turn the collector will have power, and so will that cell modem. And then on the right, that's just an example of how we have our antenna ran, down the pole underground, and then it comes up through the bottom of that cabinet. You can kind of see that little lightning arrestor. I don't know if you can scroll your mouse over that, Bill, to the left on the cabinet. Right. Yeah, to kind of right at the bottom of the cabinet where that antenna cable comes up to the right a little bit, right there. So you can see, basically it's a 90-foot piece of antenna cable, and we have it ran down the pole and then into the cabinet, which connects right to that collector. You can go to the next slide. This is just, again, an example of our dashboard, and just kind of talk about 3 different ways that you can find out what kind of outages you have on your system. So under that pie chart, if you would click on that lost link under the endpoint status summary, that's just going to give you a list of all meters and routers and collectors that you have out on your system. So it's not going to be sorted in any way, shape, or form. It's just going to give you a list. On the right hand side there where he has his mouse now, under the currently power failed, if you click that link, that will bring up the specific collectors that are without, that have outages on them. So like in this case, we only have 1 outage in our system. So if I would click that, it's going to bring up the substation that meter is talking through. But if we had, outages across our entire system, I could click that and figure out which outages are under which collector. And then the one, you can see that screenshot on your right. The way to get to that is that red exclamation point in the top right of the screen. And that is your currently power failed, your real-time outage map. So if you click that, it's going to bring up an overview of your system with aerial imagery and show you on the map where those endpoints are lost according to the Latin longs that you have imported on those endpoints. You can go to the next one, Bill. So here, chasing blinks. So this would be like if a member calls in and says that they've had their lights blink 10 times in the last 24 hours. So Command Center logs all outages, both momentary and sustained. And Bill kind of mentioned, you know, what defines a momentary and a sustained outage, the difference between the two. And this will kind of show you a little bit more detail. So to find these momentary outages, what you do, you search for the specific meter that the person is calling about. And then you can go to the Manage tab, and under the Issue Commands drop down, this is where you could do like an on-demand read or a remote connect, disconnect, or all other sorts of commands that you can issue to this specific endpoint. But in order to find this blink that they're talking about, you'll choose the Get Event Log, and then you'll choose your start date and your end date and your time, and then you press Submit. And then Bill, if you go to the next screen, this will be the results that brings back. So on the left, you can see it's a momentary outage. It tells you right there, event type, radio detected momentary outage. And you can see that lost power time was 11/15/2020 at 4:01 and 31 seconds. And the restored time is go back, Bill, there you go. The restored time is 3 seconds after that. So this specific meter saw a blink at that time for 3 seconds. And because it was under the 30 seconds, that's why it was logged as a momentary outage. On the flip side of that, if you look at the right side, this is a sustained outage. Again, it tells you right there, event type, radio detected sustained outage. Lost power time, December 1st, 2020, 6:47 and 32 seconds. The restored time is December 1st at 7:04 and 6 seconds. So this one actually turned out to be a 17-minute outage. And because it was greater than that 30 seconds, it logged it as a sustained outage. So that's just kind of the difference between the momentary and the sustained, as Bill was talking about previously. And like I said, there's lots of different ways to do the same thing in Command Center. It's just kind of how you prefer to do it. So this is one of the scenarios that we use quite a bit. And I believe that is it. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything regarding any point of the slideshow?
We have had a few questions come in, so I'll toss those out to the group, and whoever wants to answer them can. As you transition from a PLC AMR system to an RF AMI system, how does OMS handle these two different systems if you are experiencing system-wide outages?
I can kind of start on that one a little bit, but since Brad really lived it, I'll probably let him clean up whatever I say. What we've actually found is that some of the stuff wasn't implemented exactly proper. So I think on our side, actually, when we introduced the outage management, I think we had one of our multi-speak methods bad. So it caused us to stick with one system and then eventually transition over to the other. But I don't know of any reason why you can't do both systems unless, Brad, does NISC support two inputs to the OMS?
Yes, they will. In our case, we actually integrated our Landis & Gyr product. And I'm sure you could do it with Census or Tantalus as well, because it is pretty much instantaneous. And like Jared said, if you set it up, you can actually have it auto restore as well. In our particular case, our Aclara system, we do not have set up to automatically report outages. We could ping meters with it, but in our particular case, we do not use the Aclara system at all to report outages.
All right, another question that's come in. By letting OMS automatically create and restore outages, have you noticed an increase in your SAIDI or KD stats? In your oil rig example, this would have affected those stats.
So that's one reason kind of why we put those outage codes on them. So to be honest, we don't pay a whole lot of attention to our SAIDI and safety numbers, probably not as much as we should. that's kind of one of those things. We thought here at Clinton County Electric that if we put these different codes on it, then we can kind of separate at the end of the month and, basically separate our outages under all the different outage causes. So at the end of the month, any of them that have that AMI found no member call, that all gets lumped into that same group. So that's kind of how we run it here, Brad. I don't know, how do you guys do that there? Have you noticed anything?
I almost hate to answer that because we had a really great year on our system reliability last year. I can't attribute that to the Atlantis gear making a difference. I think we just had a really good year. I think this year, as we get into more of our implementation, I will be able to answer that question better. I do know the way we respond to the outages is much different now. During the day, of course, we have somebody here and we can respond to an outage before even a member knows it's an outage. So I think there's potential there to definitely help those numbers.
Thank you, guys. Another question for you. Have either of you found any meter tampering from the meter reporting an outage?
So not necessarily meter tampering per se, but in multiple occasions we have, an outage comes through our OMS system. So we don't have any idea what's going on there. There's not a crew there working that we know of. So we go ahead and dispatch on that outage during the day. And then when we get there, there could be an electrician there, working on something on the members' end. So lately, we tried to do the best as we possibly could to let the electricians know, like, you can't be doing this. You have to let us know and we will come disconnect it for you. So basically, this was going on quite a bit, apparently, without us knowing prior to our AMI system. But now, we can catch it and try to put an end to that as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, we have actually caught one member that meter tampered, and with the OMS and Landis system, it reported an outage. So.
All right, one last question. What business operational processes for outages have been put in place at each co-op for outages that are reported by the RFAMI system during working hours and after hours?
All right, I'll go first.
Okay.
So for Egyptian, we are looking at the outages as they come in, and like Jared said, if we don't have guys working in an area, we do dispatch during the day based on our OMS, if it's reported from the AMI system. And what we're finding is a lot of times they are an outage and the member may not even know they're out because they may be at work. So we go take care of it, whether that is a squirrel has tripped a transformer or whatever. Once we get to the after hours segment, we do use CRC as our dispatch. And what they are supposed to do is when a phone call or when a outage is reported through the AMI, they are supposed to try and make a phone call to the member to see if that member is actually indeed out of power. If that call goes through, then we dispatch. If they can't get a hold of anybody, we try and hold those to the next day. The unfortunate part for those of you that have CRC is occasionally they just dispatch whether or not, they just see an outage come through and they just dispatch. For the most part, that has worked out well for us. We've had some members that we've had a truck roll up and they were the only person out of power and they hadn't bothered calling in because, they just assumed somebody else would call in as well. So.
Yeah, here at Clinton County, we're very similar to that, especially during the daytime hours. So when it's during current working hours, and we see an outage go off, then we will dispatch on that, you know, as soon as we can possibly get there. And like I kind of said earlier, during non-working hours, we will let that outage sit in our OMS system until the following business day, unless that member physically calls in to report that outage. So it's a little bit different compared to Egyptian, but that's just how we thought we should approach it here at Clinton County. So I guess it's kind of up to each different co-op.
Well, Jared, Brad, Bill, we want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. Good information. I'm sure everyone enjoyed hearing from you. Up next, our last and final webinar for today will be at 2:30 on multi-channel member engagement. So we look forward to having you attend that. If you haven't registered for that, please feel free to go out to aiec.coop/webinar weeks and register. If registration is closed and you still want to get in on that, feel free to email Ashley Graham and she'll get you taken care of. With that, that concludes our third webinar series for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.